6. Further plans. The companions sat around Lamar's round dining table. It was a little cramped, but they were all able to see the map Norrin had laid out on the table while they ate. Lamar had prepared a spicy stew with wild rice. After a long day of walking, Jarrus was starving and devoured the meal appreciatively. "I'd want you along just to have you cook for us on the quest," he commented to Lamar as he accepted a second bowl of stew. The siren smiled. "I've a love for all things of the culinary nature. Unfortunately, adventures like yours aren't known for having the best meal plans." His smile faded at that. Norrin explained the Cooper's story to Lamar, who listened without interruption. When he had finished, Lamar glanced between the four of them. "You're all bent on taking down Saphacon, then?" "Yes," Maya said. "We have to rescue my father and Mr. Puddlepaw." "Indeed," Lamar said, nodding. "Well, what's your plan now?" "Find the objects," Maya said, then added doubtfully, "except we don't know how we'll do that. Other groups have been looking for them for years." "They have, but they didn't have Norrin helping them," Lamar said with a grin. He looked at the wizard. "I'm guessing you have a plan of some kind to get this far." Norrin nodded. "Maya is right. Finding the objects will be no easy quest, especially the jewel. Our best course of action now, I think, will be to look where the jewel was last seen. That means searching the Wandering Wood." "Lovely," Rigel mumbled sarcastically into his bowl. "What's in the Wandering Wood?" Jarrus asked, looking at Rigel. "What's not?" Rigel asked wryly. "We'll get to that," Norrin said. He turned back to Lamar. "Once we have the objects, we will go to Flameton and rally the Dyrans and King Makana. Then we will make our way south to Saphacon's fortress." Lamar murmured, looking thoughtful. "Well, that's a good plan, but we'll need more help than just the 5 of us. The Dyrans will probably join our cause without too much persuasion. King Makana has been working for years to stop Saphacon, but there will likely be plenty of obstacles in our way before we reach Flameton, and I'd like more backup." "What about Neely?" Rigel suggested suddenly. "Those are her people. She might help." "Who's Neely?" Jarrus asked. "A young Dyran, and my apprentice," Lamar said. "I was her mentor for a while after her parents were killed by Saphacon. Yes, Rigel, that's a good idea, but Neely's in the East Wood right now on an assignment, so I won't be able to reach her." "Well, I will think about who else could help. Before we reach the desert, we must first go through the Wandering Wood," Norrin pointed out. "Even if the jewel is no longer in the wood, where Merrin fell, it is still the fastest way to Flameton, to avoid the land of the rebel Dyrans." Lamar frowned slightly. "Well, from what you've told me, it sounds like Saphacon is no longer looking for the jewel in the wood. Not that it makes the wood any safer, but with any luck, we'll avoid the Servantiri." "Hopefully," Norrin said, "but I won't count on it." "We'll fight them if we have to," Rigel said confidently. Lamar smiled grimly. "Maybe, but you haven't seen Saphacon's latest toys he's provided for his army. Rumor is he's hired smugglers to steal and deliver weapons from the Lisneys in Kersia." Norrin set down his plate, startled. "Kersia? He wants firearms?" "I wouldn't put it past him. Even if those firearms are still an experimental invention, Saphacon will want them for his warriors." Lamar looked at him. "That's the latest rumor, at any rate. If it's true, there could definitely be problems." "Firearms?" Jarrus repeated slowly. The word was vaguely familiar. He thought he had heard his father talking about it once. "Weapons," Lamar said. "The type of weapons that can shoot tiny missiles with the power of 3 crossbows. Very new weapons. The Lisneys only began using them a few years ago, after the whole Cato issue, but very destructive." "Well, if the Servantiri are in the Wandering Wood, we can at least hope that the jewel is too," Norrin said. "The Servantiri were created by the jewel, and can sense its presence. So can Saphacon." "So we get to go through the Wandering Wood," Lamar sighed. "Lovely." "What's in the Wandering Wood?" Maya asked uncertainly. Norrin frowned, seeming to decide how to explain. "Deathcap is," he said finally, "but compared to the wood itself, Deathcap is a minor danger. The Brownie people have lived there for centuries, but it is far more dangerous to an outsider. It's not called the Wandering Wood for nothing, you know. The paths in there, you can't trust them. They wind all over the place. Yet I fear that is the fastest route to Flameton, the city of the Dyrans." Deathcap isn't the only concern, though, Lamar said. The Brownie tribes, they're always warring over one thing or another. Brownies? Jarrus repeated. He remembered Hal mentioning them back in Mata City, but he didn't know much about them. They're fierce warriors, Lamar told him. They stand maybe 4 or 5 feet tall and are covered with fur. Don't underestimate them because of their size, though. They can be very dangerous if provoked. Yes, Norrin said. One of the largest tribes is the Chantrel. The word is that Deathcap has bribed their chieftain with riches, robes, an assortment of weapons, anything, if the chief would give him the jewel. But now he's resorted to threats. Lamar nodded. Deathcap's out of his mind to get the jewel before Safakon does. Rumor is that only a few months ago he attacked the tribe, killed the chief's wife, and captured his beloved children, and is holding them hostage until Chief Cedar gives him the jewel. But does Chief Cedar have the jewel? Jarrus asked. Lamar shrugged. No one knows. Deathcap might only be seeking an excuse to go to war with the Chantrel again. Then again, he may know something we don't. So would Deathcap know when the jewel is near? Maya asked. More than that, he could feel when it is near, Norrin said, like a prickling down his spine. He feels it strongest for the knife of destruction, because that is what he stole, like I can feel when the ring is near, and likewise Rygel's father for the jewel. But the jewel has a darkness that anyone could feel, if you were close enough. How do you know all this, Norrin? Jarrus asked curiously. He knew Norrin had once been a guardian, but he seemed to know a lot about Safakon's weapons. Norrin smiled slightly. When the objects were created, the Guardians made it our priority to learn as much as we could about them, and how we could destroy them. But not many other species know the jewel lore, so I'm not sure if the Brownies would identify it if it were found. Not like the jewel is especially inconspicuous, though, Lamar pointed out with a crooked grin. It's a blue diamond, as big as a hen's egg. You'd think a Brownie would miss it? He paused, thinking. On second thought, you might be right. The Brownies don't pay much attention to the old stories. Even if they did find it, they would probably grind it up and sprinkle it over mushrooms as seasoning. Lamar wrinkled his nose. Very acquired taste, mushrooms. Personally, I would rather eat... Norrin cut him off quickly. Lamar could go on about food for hours. Returning to battle plans, Jarrus, I think most of them shall be discussed at Flameton. All we need to worry about for now is getting the objects together, and then we can destroy them. How will we do that? Jarrus asked. All 3 objects must be broken at the exact same moment upon the golden tablet, Norrin said. That is the only way, and it must be done quickly. Safakon will hear of this venture soon enough, and once he does, we are all a threat to him. 7. Trails and Tribes. They spent the night in Lamar's house. Jarrus set up his mat beside the fireplace and watched the flames dwindle down as he dozed off. The smell of baking bread and the sound of voices woke him. Lamar crouched beside the fire, carefully removing a freshly baked loaf from over the coals. "Morning," he said as Jarrus stirred. "Pack your mat up and we can eat a little before we get on the trail." "We're getting out early again?" Jarrus asked groggily, stretching as he sat up. He noticed the other 3 bedrolls in the room were empty. His companions must already be up. "There's only so much daylight," Lamar said with a shrug, and wrapped the loaf in a cloth. Jarrus yawned as Maya came into the room, along with Norrin. "No more rain," Maya reported cheerfully, moving to the warm fire. "There's a heavy fog over the swamp, but it's not as cold as yesterday." "That's good," Jarrus said, stifling another yawn as he rolled up the mat. He glanced over to the table. Norrin and Lamar were speaking in lowered tones, and Rygel was sharpening the blade of his sword. "Can you believe we're really doing this?" he asked Maya, grinning in spite of his weariness. Maya glanced over at their companions and smiled. "I know. Finding our fathers doesn't seem quite as impossible anymore. Maybe we'll really do it." "Hope so," Jarrus murmured, trying to roll his mat up tighter. It still didn't fit in the stuff sack. He'd have to ask Rygel for help again. They ate a quick meal, then headed outside. A thick fog hovered over the murky water, penetrated only by the rays of the rising sun. The calls of strange birds echoed eerily through the air as they walked down the wood plank path. The sun had risen by the time they left the boardwalk behind and reached the edge of the swamp. A dirt path wound steadily into the dark woods ahead. "Welcome to the Wandering Wood," Lamar said, nodding ahead. "This path is the main road through the forest, and we'll want to keep to it as best we can." Jarris followed as they started into the wood, looking around in awe. Growing up on the rocky coast of Mata City, he had never seen a forest like this. The morning light afforded little sight in the woods, bathing everything in hazy gray. The trees towered above them, growing in dense ranks. The woods seemed to grow darker and denser as they went on, with ferns and briars forming a thick underbrush. The weather had become muggy and warm. "Norin," Jarris asked as they moved on, "how do we know which way to go? You said last night that the paths can't be trusted." Norin nodded. "Lamar has explored most of this part of the wood," he said. "After that, we will rely heavily on direction from the stars and sun. I'll teach you sometime." He smiled and moved on ahead. A while later, they stopped at a crossroads. The trail diverged into 4 paths, each winding away into the shadowed wood. Lamar looked up at Norin. "Which way?" "Northeast," Norin told him, "toward the desert." Lamar looked uncertain. "You're aware that most of this road is unmapped. Might just be a dead end. It would be better to head straight north, out of the wood, and take the east road to reach Flameton." "Yes," Norin admitted, "but we would lose a lot of time. King Makana must be made aware of what we are doing, so we must reach Flameton as soon as we can." They continued on, following Norin. Lamar looked wary, scenting the breeze, searching the smells that only his nose could catch. Jarris could smell things too, but they were all unfamiliar, and he couldn't tell if any of them were dangerous or not. Maya looked worried, and padded forward to catch up to Lamar. "What do you think is down this road, if it's unmapped?" Lamar looked unsure. "Maybe nothing. Maybe Deathcap. These paths are tricky to judge. You can explore them for years and still not be sure." Jarris glanced up, feeling a prickle of unease. "Deathcap? What would Deathcap do to us?" Norin overheard the question and answered. "It's difficult to guess the mind of Deathcap. He is so crazed with power. I highly doubt my presence, at least, would be welcome. The last time I saw Deathcap, he had sworn to kill me, and he might assume that I am trying to steal the knife of destruction from him." "But we need the knife, don't we?" Maya asked with a frown. "We do, but Deathcap won't hand it over willingly, and it will be very difficult to take it from him by force. I am still determining what will be done to get the knife," Norin said. Night fell early in the shadowy woods. They set up camp a little ways off the trail, and Rigel took the first watch. Jarris laid out his mat near Lamar. He felt safer near the siren in these strange woods. "You can turn into anything, then?" he asked curiously as they all settled down. "Well, yes," Lamar said, looking pleased. "I have to see it first, and powers don't transfer over, unfortunately, or else I would have turned into some sort of indestructible creature and defeated Saphakon long ago." Jarris raised his eyebrows, guessing he was only half joking. Slowly, everyone else fell asleep, while Jarris lay awake, alone except Norin, who sat on the other side of camp. Jarris's mind felt too full to sleep. It had only been 4 days since they'd left home, he realized. 4 days since everything had changed. His thoughts strayed to his father, taken by Saphakon. Was he still alive? The unwelcome question crossed his mind, and he shuddered and pushed it away, unable to bear the possible answer. Rigel woke them the following morning, a little while after sunrise. Jarris could tell by the uneasiness in his eyes that something was wrong. "Norin, we might have a problem," Rigel reported as soon as he had wakened the wizard. "On watch a few hours ago, right before dawn, I heard something. I went to check it out and found this." He held up a small, black-feathered dart with a razor-sharp point. "Where was it?" Norin asked. Rigel jerked his head toward the brush to the right. "Back there, maybe 10 or 12 yards back. There's a lot of deer trails crisscrossing the main road, so I thought it might be an animal. But there's a lot of brownie tracks, too." "Brownies?" Maya repeated. "Let me see that," Lamar said, motioning to the dart. Rigel held it out to him. Lamar sniffed the tip carefully for a moment, then nodded. "Poison. The brownies use it on their darts." "You're sure?" Rigel asked. "I'd say better safe than sorry for this," Lamar said, looking at Norin, "unless you plan to risk a confrontation." "No," Norin agreed. He sighed. "It was my fault. We should not have come this way. We'll need to go back to the crossroads and take the other road." "We have to?" Jarrus said, not at all liking the thought of backtracking. "We have neither the strength nor the desire to clash with a brownie war party," Norin said. "No, this is what we need to do." The day was even muggier than the day before, if that was possible. A dreary haze was falling, and the warmth made it unbearably humid. When the misty rain stopped at last, it was replaced by swarms of tiny gnats buzzing around them and stinging any part of exposed skin. Jarrus inhaled, too, and while he coughed them out to the others' sympathetic amusement, the rest of the insects swarmed around him, biting him behind his ears, on the back of his neck, between his shoulder blades, anywhere he couldn't swat them. "Lovely place, isn't it?" Lamar commented dryly. "We've got to be close to the crossroads," Rigel grumbled. "How far did—" Then he stopped suddenly, listening. Jarrus looked around, catching a strange scent in the air. Norin and Lamar were both silent, listening intently. He felt a prickle go up his spine. Something was there. Eyes were watching from the brush. Rigel drew his sword. Then Maya gave a scream, and Jarrus whirled around. A net had sprung out of the path, so well hidden by the leaves that Maya had stepped back right on top of it. Now she hung, high above, squirming desperately. "Maya!" he shouted in alarm. He turned swiftly to Rigel, but froze, realizing that there was a much larger problem to address. A high-pitched whistling came from the trees, wild and chilling, and suddenly the woods came alive. Brownies sprang from their hiding places, brandishing knives and slings. 4 feet tall, their fur bristling, clad in tattered leather armor, their ears flicked back like angry wildcats, they attacked. Norin sent a shower of sparks from his staff, making many of them step back. "We have no quarrel with you, warriors," he said slowly, his voice calm. "May we speak to your leader before you fight us?" Either the brownies didn't understand him, or just didn't care. They loosed a volley of darts and stones from their slings that rained down on the group. Norin blocked the blows with his staff, the ends of which now crackled with yellow sparks. Lamar joined him, his shape flickering as he transformed into a hissing snake. The snake made several more brownies scatter, but more and more kept coming. Rigel lunged forward, swinging his sword, but a rock from a sling struck him in the jaw, and he collapsed. Maya screamed again, squirming, helpless as she watched. "Maya!" Jarrus shouted again, reaching up for her, but she was too high. He felt paws grasp him from behind, the claws digging into his shoulder blades. A brownie hauled him back, slipping a noose around his neck. Jarrus squirmed, lashing out, but then the brownie pulled a ragged sack over his head, concealing the last light of the outside world. He felt himself being hauled upright, and could hear Norin's voice as he tried to reason with the brownies. Maya's voice came in the other direction, the words muffled and unrecognizable. At least they were all together. He realized, dimly, that they were moving into the woods again. Only this time, they were captives. 2 hours, maybe, of stumbling blindly through the wood had passed before Jarrus became aware that the terrain had changed. Sharp rocks jabbed at his paws, and judging from the light breeze, they were in an open area. He was pulled forward, into darkness, and forced down an echoing hall. He seemed to be inside a structure of some sort. The cobblestone was cold under his paws. He was shoved forward abruptly, and the brownie pulled off the sack. Jarrus sat in a stone cell, alone and shivering. The brownie locked the door and left without a word. Taking shaking breaths, he settled down again, forcing himself to think. He didn't seem to be in the forest anymore, at least not directly. The floor beneath him was hard stone, cold and unyielding. There would be no digging out. He was in a stone cell. A door, made of interlocking steel bars, offered a limited view of the hall beyond. He could see more cells, but couldn't see if anyone was inside. There was a rope around his neck and wrists, which was tied to a post in the center of the room. He tugged on his bonds briefly to no avail, and panic filled him. The tight quarters of the cell made it feel like he couldn't breathe. "Hey!" he shouted, staggering on 3 legs as he ran around the post like a leashed dog. Maddened for an instant, he gasped with fear for a few panicked seconds, mind swirling with thoughts. Where were his companions? Were they all dead? Was he the only one left? No, he said out loud, regaining control of himself. No. If the brownies were going to kill them, they would have done it in the woods, and not gone to all the work of capturing them alive, which meant his companions were probably somewhere else in this stone fortress. A clank made him jump, and a door at the far end of the line of cells opened, letting in a blaze of daylight. A party of 3 entered, 2 tough-looking men with tattoos on their bulging arms, and 1 brownie. There was a cold and commanding presence about him. His fur was dark, groomed magnificently so that it shone, and there was a chain of bone and turquoise beads around his neck. His armor was also made of leather, but in better shape than the armor his warriors wore. A scar streaked his face, half hidden by fur. One of his eyes was green, the other was yellow, giving him a wild and utterly evil look. "Leave us," the brownie said to a small figure huddled by the door to Jarrus's cell. It was another brownie, younger, wearing a tattered tunic. The young brownie raised his head and answered softly in his native language. His eyes were frightened and sad, and Jarrus guessed he would only be around 14 in human years. Whatever he had responded with made the Dark One glare at him. "Are you deaf now, as well as stupid? Out," he ordered sharply, jerking his head at the door. The young slave got up and slunk down the hall and outside. As the door closed behind him, Jarrus caught a glimpse of a wide courtyard, mottled with age and moss. It seemed he was in some sort of ruin, now inhabited by these brownies. The door to his cell opened as the dark brownie walked in. Jarrus watched him warily. "So," the brownie purred finally, his voice soft, "a cooper in the wandering wood, in my lands." I didn't know they were your lands, sir," Jarrus said hesitantly. That was true, at least. "Did you not?" murmured the brownie, still calm. "And your friends, did they know? Did your pretty Cooper girl know? We did not think so, and it was not easy to get her to talk." One of the ruffians gave a dark chuckle. "Maya." Fear for her safety filled Jarrus, followed by a hot fire of rage. Before he realized what he was doing, he lunged forward, reaching to shake this smirking brownie. His bonds stopped him abruptly, a few inches from the brownie. "If you hurt her, if you even touched her," he sputtered. The brownie looked at him, unfazed. "You'll what?" He reached out so fast Jarrus barely saw the paws close around him. The brownie gripped his neck and pulled him closer, making the rope tighten around Jarrus's throat. "You have no power here, Cooper," the brownie snarled, no longer calm. "I am Deathcap, Lord of the Wandering Wood, and you will tell me what I wish to know." He shoved Jarrus back, and Jarrus fell, gasping for air, his heart pounding. "Now tell me," Deathcap said, his voice lowering to a hiss. "Why are you here?" We're passing through," Jarrus stammered. "We're trying to get to the desert." "The desert?" Deathcap asked. "Not to Flameton?" No, of course not," Jarrus said shakily. He was so terrified he could barely form words. "Really?" Deathcap snarled, voice rising again. He stepped closer, his eyes full of a maddened fire. "Then please explain. Why travel with that rat of a wizard Norin?" Jarrus stared at him, unable to think of an answer. Deathcap struck him hard across the face, and he fell again, tasting blood in his mouth. "You're after the jewel!" Deathcap shouted, his voice echoing through the fortress. No, sir, I swear." "Don't lie to me, Cooper," Deathcap snarled, seizing a handful of Jarrus's fur and hauling him upright again. "We already know. That sweet little girl was quite talkative, after some persuasion, as I mentioned." "No." Jarrus's fear for himself was swiftly replaced by fear for Maya. Innocent, brave young Maya, she wouldn't know what to do. She would have been defenseless in the hands of these monsters. At that moment, a thunderous explosion shook the hall. Several large rocks dislodged from the ceiling, crashing to the ground. Deathcap let go of Jarrus and whirled around, his face showing confusion and fury. "What?" A guard appeared at the far end of the hall. "Sir, the gunpowder, the barrels the smugglers brought in, it's gone, sir. Been exploded." "Exploded?" Deathcap snarled incredulously. "How the devil has it done that?" "We don't know, sir," stammered the unfortunate guard. "It seems a lantern. The fuse fell. Took out 5 of our men." Deathcap unleashed a stream of profanities in the Brownie language, which Jarris was rather glad he couldn't understand, and stormed out the door with the guards. The door had barely closed when a slight figure slipped through the door, moving nimbly towards Jarris. Jarris stared in confusion as he recognized the young Brownie. The slave unlocked the cell and entered. "Hurry," he said as he undid Jarris's bonds. "Get to the courtyard. Watch out for the guards. Your friends are already there." "What? How?" Jarris stammered, totally confused. "You don't have much time. We bought you as much time as we could," the Brownie interrupted him, his eyes wide with both excitement and fear. "We?" "The siren, the one in your party. He turned into some sort of beetle and crawled out of his bonds. Escaped." "Lamar escaped?" Hope started to fill him again. The little Brownie nodded rapidly. "It's going to be total chaos out there in a moment, but you should be able to find your friends. All us slaves are escaping in the confusion." His eyes had lit up. "Your leader, the one they call Norin, he's one of the guardians of Gayral? You're going to stop Saphicon?" Yes, we were going to try," Jarris said slowly, following him out of the cell. Thankfully, his rescuer didn't ask any more questions. They reached the outer door, which hung by one rusted hinge. The young Brownie opened the door and peeked out. "The siren said to have you meet in the courtyard, just outside the gate. Good luck," he added, then turned and trotted away down the hall. Jarris stared after him, then turned the other way and bounded up a flight of stairs. The front door had been blown off, and outside he could see the chaos of the courtyard. Guards ran in all directions, some trying to put out the fire in the trees, others dodging large chunks of debris. A large statue of Deathcap stood in the center of the courtyard, missing an arm. Jarris moved towards it carefully. The guards seemed to be distracted, but he wasn't taking any chances. "Watch it," came a familiar voice from behind a large rock. Jarris turned to see Lamar, who was watching the confused and panicked guards in amusement. Jarris ducked down beside him. "What's going on? Where are the others?" "They're okay. That young Brownie kid got them out. Smart boy," Lamar said approvingly. "They're near the edge of the wood. I came back to find you." "Is Maya?" "She's fine," Lamar said. "She was worried for you. Apparently the guards questioned her. She didn't talk, though. Good for Maya." "They did the same with me," Jarris said, relieved to hear that she was all right. He paused as a thought occurred to him. "Lamar, hang on. This is Deathcap's palace, right? So does that mean he still has the Brownie princess, the one he captured from the Chantrell tribe?" Lamar thought a moment. "Got a good point there. If we rescued her, we could have the Chantrell on our side." "Then what if we rescued her?" Jarris suggested. The siren's eyes scanned the courtyard. "Well, I suppose we could try. How will we find her, though?" "I thought I told you to run," came a voice, and they both turned to see the young Brownie slave. "We're working on a plan," Jarris started. Lamar interrupted him, getting straight to the point. "Ah, just the Brownie we want to see. I suppose you know where they're holding the Princess Morel?" The Brownie looked startled. "Well, yes, I do. Are you going to rescue her?" "Planning to, yes. And we'd be delighted to have you join us, Mr. Lamar looked inquiringly at him. The Brownie bowed slightly. "Persini and Mana. I can lead you to the princess's cell." "In Mana?" Lamar repeated. He frowned. "As in Cedar and Mana, the chieftain of the Chantrell?" "Yes, he's my father," the Brownie said shyly. "Then you're a prince," Jarris said, startled. The youth hadn't struck him as a princely type. "Well, yes," Persini said, looking bashful. "But I'd rather just be Persini." "Well then," Lamar said, starting back toward the fortress entrance. "Can you lead us to your sister?" Persini nodded, and they wove their way through the wreckage into the halls. 8. The Princess. "So, can I ask you a question?" Persini asked hesitantly as he led Lamar and Jarris down the halls. Most of Deathcap's guards were out in the courtyard trying to round up the escaping slaves, but twice Persini's quick ears had saved them from being discovered. Now, below ground yet again, it was eerily quiet. "Just one?" Lamar said with a half-grin. "Well, I figured Deathcap might just be uptight about people being in his territory," Persini said. "He's been in a bad mood since the rain started up again. but he doesn't normally interrogate trespassers, and he definitely doesn't hold them in the most secure cells in the fort." "Indeed?" Lamar said lightly. "So then I thought maybe you were one of his rivals," Persini continued slowly. "But if that were the case, you wouldn't be in the prison cells. You'd be in the torture hall." "And we weren't," Lamar said. "No. So in that case," Persini said, looking at Lamar carefully, "you're some sort of threat to Deathcap, or someone he needs information from." "Well, that would be closer to the truth," Lamar said. "Right. Well, what are you doing in the Wandering Wood?" Jarrus glanced at Lamar, not sure how much they could tell. Lamar studied the young brownie for a moment. "We can tell you," he said, "but then you'll need to be joining us, lad. There's great danger afoot and spies all over the place, and if you knew, you would have to come with us." Persini's eyes widened, and he nodded eagerly. "I can do that. I want to come with you. But where are you going?" Jarrus lowered his voice. "The only way to take down Saphicon is to find his 3 objects of power, the jewel, the ring, and the knife, and destroy them." The brownie's dark eyes widened even more. "The objects," he whispered in a mixture of awe and fear. "But I thought those were just tales." "They're real enough, unfortunately," Lamar said. "And then there's the Servantiri to deal with. We'll need help to do all this. We'll need to join with the Dyrans first, so we're hoping to reach Flameton as soon as possible." Persini was silent for a moment, taking it all in. "Well, my sister and I can lead you through the wood, but after that I don't know the area very well," he said. "We'll take all the help we can get to get out of the wood," Jarrus said fervently. They walked in silence until Persini paused at a corner. "Quiet. There's a couple of guards around this corner." 2 brownies and a large man were bickering. "I don't care how much Boss wants us to keep her. I ain't guarding her a minute longer," the man said obstinately. "Especially not alone. She's a lit fuse. You give her the doubt, she'll take you out." "Very poetic. Either way, we need someone to stay here," one of the brownies said wearily. "Deathcap will skin us alive if any more prisoners escape, especially if she does. She's our bargaining chip against the Chantrelle." "What about the prince?" "The prince disappeared right after the powder exploded," the brownie replied. Persini grinned at his 2 comrades. "We can't lose the princess, too." "Shame for Deathcap," snapped the guard. "I hate every second guarding her. She unscrewed a ceiling beam and dropped it on the head of the last guard here. Split his skull in half." "Well, she's not going to do it again," said the other brownie. "Come on, Leet. We need you to do this." The guard scowled. "Fine, but I'll expect a pay raise." "Yes, of course," the first brownie said, relieved that the man had relented. The 2 brownies turned away, and for an instant Jarrus panicked, sure that the guards would walk right past them. But at the last second there was a crash from down the hall, and the brownies turned away sharply, then jogged off in the other direction to investigate the noise. Persini, Lamar, and Jarrus edged around the wall. Leet, the guard, stood alone, clutching his sword nervously as he glanced at the door of the cell. "Why is he so nervous?" Jarrus wondered quietly. At that moment there was a low clank from above. The guard leapt back just in time. A steel beam plummeted from the ceiling and crashed to the ground, right where he'd been standing. "Watch the grating next time," a female voice taunted from above in a sing-song manner. The guard cursed loudly for several moments before running down the hall, shouting for backup. Jarrus looked up in bewilderment. A moment later, a female brownie climbed lithely down from the beams above and dropped to the ground. Like Persini, her fur was a rich brown. Her hair was a shade darker and was cropped short. She wore what had once been a fine dress made of feathers and leather, but was now tattered and dirty. The earrings she wore were made of turquoise. "Morel, I found—" Persini started, stepping forward. The princess whipped around, pointing a short dagger at them. "The group that was imprisoned here," Persini finished, not even fazed. "Is that them?" the princess asked, nodding at Jarrus and Lamar. "Thought you said there were more." "They're waiting outside," Jarrus stammered. Something about this brownie princess took his breath away. She was stocky and well-built, and looked like she had spent most of her life fighting. There was a pride, a wildness to her, and also a toughness that he didn't expect. She reminded him of a wildcat with its hackles up. "A Cooper and a Siren," Morel said slowly, relaxing as she studied them. Her eyes lingered on Lamar. "Surprising. I thought all the Sirens were on the mainland by now. You didn't stick around long to help once Saphicon rose to power." The cold tone in her voice rattled Jarrus, but Lamar only shrugged. "Ah, well, I'd only just settled in, really. Just redone the flooring in the old place. Couldn't leave it. My name is Lamar Skytooth, and this is Jarrus Puddlepaw of Mata City." Morell nodded shortly. "Pleased to meet you." "We'd better get going," Persini said. "Those guards are going to come back." Morell nodded again, shouldered a buckskin pack, and followed as they headed toward the courtyard. "What took you?" was the first thing Rigel demanded as he saw Lamar. "Had to get some help, and we picked up some backup," Lamar said, nodding to the two brownies. Norin looked at them and raised his eyebrows. "It seems we have a few new additions." "Morell and Persini and Mana, the princess and prince of the Chantrell tribe," Jarrus said, hoping Maya would be impressed. She did look surprised, at least. "Brownies," Rigel repeated slowly. He looked at Norin uncertainly. "Don't know if that counts as backup. We don't have time for this." "Oh dear," Lamar muttered, as Morell turned to face him sharply. "Your quest needs help. Do you really have time to pick and choose?" She eyed him hard. Rigel, who had a splitting headache from the earlier blow and was in a bad mood from the biting gnats, rose to the challenge. "Well, since you're asking, princess, I'm afraid this isn't a stroll in your fine woods. We can't be held up every time we need to rescue you from an angry bumblebee." "Well, unlike the Guardians, who dispersed the minute Sapphicon showed up, I don't plan to run," Morell said, with practiced politeness that bordered on sarcasm. "And so far the brownies have done a wonderful job at taking him down," Rigel said, not bothering to disguise his sarcasm. "And neither of us can do anything about those old wrongs," Norin said crisply, throwing a look at both of them. "We must put aside old wrongs and work together if we are to succeed. Is that clear?" Rigel looked at Norin. "She has to come?" he asked with a forced smile. "Yes," Norin said wearily. "We can't leave them here." "Whatever you're all planning," Morell said, "if it involves taking down Sapphicon, we're coming with you. Our people were forced out of our lands by first Sapphicon and then Deathcap. Besides, our tribe disappeared north after we were taken, and I haven't the faintest idea where they are. We're coming." "Very well, but I hope you understand that I am in command," Norin said, studying her. They stared one another down for a moment. Norin won. "Now, let's get moving. We must leave before Deathcap's warriors come after us." Persini led them out, around the courtyard and into the trees. Jarrus felt himself relax as they entered the thick wood again. The muggy air and shadowed light felt almost welcoming after the terror of Deathcap's palace. Norin urged them on, clutching his staff. "They're coming," Lamar said in a low voice. "Deathcap's warriors. I can hear them." Rigel stood stiffly, looking at Norin. "Do we fight?" In the instant that he asked the question, a dart whistled through the air, missing his neck by inches. They froze. A pack of brownies and ruffians slipped silently through the brush, closing them in a circle, weapons lowered at the little group. Through the ranks strode a dark figure, smirking in triumph. "What a touching reunion," Deathcap sneered. "And how well you tried to escape me."